Alright, greetings from the wasteland out here in the survival pod. This is Freedom Film. What's the topic today? I've heard a lot of people talk about the declining birth rates, but if I'm going to be honest, I really don't think it's a problem. I just think it's a that we talk about on the regular because, well, most of our country, most worlds, most governments worldwide are nothing but a Ponzi scheme. So it's a problem in that respect. But if we're looking at the world we're going into, it seems like what would be naturally happening is less production of people. Yeah. Where am I going with this? Freedom Phil, like, subscribe. Let's get into it and always turn up the video speed. And why do I say that? Because realistically, if you're watching videos at regular speed, what are you doing? The name of the channel is the instruction. And when I upload this, you should watch it at 1.75. Let's get into it. Like, subscribe. I don't mind the noise in the background. There's some people on the neighboring hill on yonder firing a few shots off, doing some target practicing. But, I've always heard this line that, declining birth rates, and some people talk about demographic replacement and all that. And I just ask, okay, why is declining birth rate such a problem? And like I said earlier, it's because our entire system is based on a Ponzi scheme. You need more people in the future to pay for the welfare benefits, Social Security benefits in general, Section 8, whatever it is, the military and all of it. You need more people to pay into the system, keep the system afloat. And declining birth rates equal less workers. But improvements in technology also equal less workers. Okay? And the problem that we see today, more and more, and this has been a strategy that you see employed by the leftist parties of any sort of Western nation, is import massive levels of people. Some of these people are, prolifically breed, even if they're producing what would be considered sub-IQ individuals. And I'm not saying that to be an asshole. I just notice a lot of people, like, you look at some parts of I'm a little tired of the term the developing world. Well, we've all been on this planet as a species for how long, and why is it taking some people so long to develop? And yes, there's been wars, there's been colonization here and there, but when colonization ended in the 50s or 60s in some of these places, why did things go backwards in some of these countries? And so some of these people come to the quote-unquote first world, and the lefties, they love these people because they basically kind of jangle the concept, you'll be a citizen, to get these people as voters, to get these numbers, to try to swing states, and being done by California. But other than trying to make sure that they always are able to get reelected, what's the great benefit to having tons of people? I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that you're running a deficit budget every goddamn year, pretty much every Western nation, in fact, almost all nations do this. And then, if it wasn't for that fact, you wouldn't need all these excess people. You wouldn't. And the factor that I look at with it is that the jobs we once did, like, I happen to enjoy truck driving. That'll be around, I don't know, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and then I imagine the robots will be driving for us. But eventually that job will be gone. Used to be that computers were a safe bet, but now, more and more, it's looking like computers, the robots are going to be doing the robotic work themselves, and there's no need to have someone programming all the time. I mean, you need fewer and fewer coders to get the results. And yes, you're going to have more advanced people, but there will come a time when the machines are going to be able to actually do most of that work themselves. Now, a safe bet for a while, I'd say, is plumbing and electricians' work, trades work. But in due time, they will build a robot that's able to do the best basic rough framing and whatnot. There'll be jobs that are just lost. And so the question becomes, why are you having children in a world where they're not going to have a job or a future? And this is where some people talk about UBI, like the concept of a universal basic income. And, I get it. It sounds pretty cool. But the reality of it is that, from the corporate outlook, what's the point in paying taxes for UBI just so you can get a portion of your money back? So inevitably, as we become more and more technological, there's less reasons to have kids. And you could also see the situation when it came to, say, feminism and education on women. More educated and the more left-leaning women become, the less children they're having. And I know a lot of people are like, well, that's, more it's great for society. Is it? Is it? I don't see. I don't know. I could see the argument that we need to have more children to maintain our culture. But I think what's more of a threat to our culture being destroyed, whether it's, American, European, whatever culture you're in, is a flood of foreigners that have no interest in assimilating. Like once they get a critical mass of their people, they just do whatever they were going to do. That's just what they do. And I know a lot of people are like, they don't want to hear that, but what's actually more of a threat to your culture is constantly being relying off a bunch of foreigners to keep going. So, wild thought here. You could maintain your culture without having massive amounts of children, but you do need to have a certain amount of people, you do need to have a certain amount of people to keep everything going. One of the problems that someone brought up was, the factor of infrastructure issues. If we don't have enough people to pay for the repair of the infrastructure, let alone do the work for the infrastructure, like say the pipes in the ground, you get some of these towns are over 100 years old, and a 100-year-old town, sooner or later, you're going to have to replace some pipes there. You're going to have to do something about that. But then that comes into the conversation I had the other day. It's like part of the reason I often recommend, if you're going to buy property, buy it outside of the city so you don't have to connect. Like for instance, with the incinerating toilets, are you going to need that septic nearly as much? The situation with water recycling, like a hydro loop. How many times could you reuse the same water over and over again? Using water, like for instance, soaps that are biocompatible, that are like plant food. Are you going to need the infrastructure we used to have? But that is going to be an issue. So we do need people to keep it going. But I'd argue what's actually more of a threat to people having, whether they're going to have families or not, is, well, one, do women want to have kids? Do they actually want to have kids, or do they just keep on pushing it off until their eggs are getting to that kind of, I don't know how to put this, but they're starting to get to, potential mental disability babies. They're putting it off so long, they're having more autistic children in general. And then the other factor is cost of living. So you see these situations, like for instance, with the Amish, the Hasidic Jews, the more fundamentalist Mormons, and some other groups, that they have tons of kids. Some people, they're, the bad examples that are like, whether it's the trailer parks or the hood, the bad examples are just literally having the kid as a paycheck. But you see in some of these cases where some of these people end up having like anywhere from 6 to 12 kids, sometimes 15 or more, in some of these religious communities. And the Amish, for example, they don't actually take benefits from the government, which I gotta give them credit for that. And they still have big families. So you start to think about that for a second, and you look at some of the things that might be causing people to have smaller families. And I think a lot of it is the cost of living. The fact that a basic house these days costing around $400,000, that's, you can go to a small farm town all over the Midwest, America, Texas, the South. You can get a place for, $50,000. I saw a place the other day for, I think it was 15 or 20,000. And mind you, that was a house that needed some work, but still you can find affordable housing in other parts of the country. And that's part of the thing. Can you afford where these jobs, where these alleged great jobs are, to actually afford to have a normal family life like you did in the past? Or is it like that whole thing where, the intro to Idiocracy, where the people that are dumb, frankly, and subsidized are having all the kids? The subsidization. And I look at the situation, like look at Africa, for example. If not for the food coming in from the West, would there be so many people being born there? If not for all the grain and aid money and all this stuff, we would have to have a huge, population issue. And then you look at America, where it costs a fortune to generally do what our parents did. And you kind of see a reason that people are having maybe 1 or 2 kids. And we got to go into the past as far as another whole line in there. And they're like, well, what do you mean? Years ago, that is not the case anymore. It's not even close to the case. Like kids aren't viewed as a retirement. They're viewed as kind of an accessory of sorts. Like you have like, now we got the house, we got their education, now we got our cars, we've done some trips, we got our house in the burbs, and now let's have some kids. Like it's just an add-on, an accessory to your life. And in the past, it really was about leaving, we're going to keep the family name going and the farm or the business or something. So having multitudes of children was not an uncommon thing. Lord knows back in the day how many of them would die off from just like, there were cultures out there, but they wouldn't name the kid until they made it to at least 5 years old because it was that sketchy on whether your kid would make it. We don't live in that world anymore, at least in the first world. And you start thinking about that for a second. There's going to be less jobs. We're not off this planet yet. We don't have space-faring technology. We're not building colonies on other planets or asteroids or moons. No, we're still just here. So why do we need to have so many children? And I don't think we do. I just think it's more people clogging up the McDonald's line. It's more mouth breathers out there. More cars, more traffic, more infrastructure needed. And, if we could actually get it to more of a fair system where, before you even have your first child, you're already paying for someone else's family. Like if you're a successful individual, like you're a man and you're out working, you're probably losing 30 to 40% of your paycheck, your labor, to pay for programs that you may never use. So I think once we maybe adjust that issue, then maybe perhaps we could talk about having families. But the idea that, we need more people, and from a cultural reason, I can kind of see the argument. But no, not really. No, you just need to kick out the foreigners. If someone's not going to relate to whatever country they've moved to, become one with the people, then they should leave. You shouldn't, you fled your country. Let's be honest. You fled. You left your country for a better country, and you moved to somebody else's country, and now you're trying to set up the same fucking bullshit in their country. And I think it's perfectly within that country's rights, those people's rights, to say, hey, unless you're gonna take it over, don't start that shit here. But other than that argument, for maintaining culture, I don't see why you need a massive population. Because we don't have the jobs in the future. We don't have the resources. Like, we can grow a lot of food, we can do a lot of things, but houses don't appear out of fucking thin air. Takes time to grow a tree to turn it into a 2x4. And from my perspective, I'm like, no. But I don't know. Some people are all about, we got to keep the birth rate up. And I think the conversation would be entirely different if it wasn't for the fact that we run a Ponzi scheme as a country. But that's just my thoughts. Freedom Phil, take it easy.